Hi, this is Kim Keys, and I'm podcasting this from just outside of Washington, D.C. in the state of Maryland. Since I'm doing a review about the currently hip and popular podcast series called Missing Richard Simmons, I thought it would be appropriate for me to do this review in podcast form. I first became aware of fitness guru Richard Simmons when I was growing up back in the 1970s. At the time, he had his own daytime talk show, and I happened to be at a friend's home whose mother was watching it at the time. Even then, he was an unforgettable character with his afro, wild flashy clothes, and larger-than-life personality. In the years since, he has gone on to release numerous fitness videos, such as his Sweatin' to the Oldies series, and has done infomercials and made appearances on various talk shows. He managed to rake in a lot of money over the years during his career as an upbeat celebrity fitness guru. He was so beloved that when he came out as gay, his fans stood by him because many of them appreciated how they had lost a lot of weight using his fitness videos. All that came to an abrupt end in 2014 when he stopped making public appearances and he closed down his seminal Slimmons fitness studio in Beverly Hills, which was the studio that launched his fitness guru career. Since then, he has stopped communicating with friends, while his publicist said that he just wanted to step out of the spotlight after a 40-year career in the public eye. At one point, an unnamed person had the Los Angeles Police Department investigate allegations that Simmons was being imprisoned in his home against his will by his housekeeper. The LAPD found no evidence that Simmons is currently being held hostage by anyone. Simmons broke his current 3 years of silence when he called the Today Show to deny rumors that he was unwell and currently being held hostage in his own home. A few months after that phone interview, he posted a message on his official Facebook page denying rumors that his public absence was due to him transitioning to become a woman. Okay, so it looks like Richard Simmons just wants to take a break from being a celebrity. That's not unusual. I remember when the late John Lennon took 5 years off from being a rock star because he was tired of constantly being in the public eye, and he decided to become a full-time stay-at-home father to his younger son. Lennon refused to give interviews or record new music during those 5 years. He eventually released a new album just 2 months before he was murdered by a so-called fan in 1980. Richard Simmons has recently come back into the news, and it's being done against his will. Filmmaker Dan Taberski was a one-time friend of Simmons who was even talking with Simmons at one point about making a documentary about his life and career. Taberski was among the friends whom Simmons has decided to cut out of his life with no explanation. In response, Taberski is currently releasing a series of half-an-hour podcasts called Missing Richard Simmons. I only listened to the first episode, but that was enough to leave a bad taste in my mouth. Taberski claims that he's only doing this podcast as an open love letter to his former friend because he's concerned about his silence. If he's doing this mainly as an open love letter, why is he making a multi-part podcast series, each of which runs at least 30 minutes long? Why did he get paid advertising sponsors for his podcast series? You can clearly hear commercials throughout the first podcast episode. And why did he go through the trouble to create a website at www.missingrichardsimmons.com? After all, if he was simply doing an open love letter out of concern for his friend, he could have simply done a 15-minute or less podcast using a MacBook with Audacity installed without getting paid sponsors that basically said, "Dear Richard, I miss you, please call me," taking a free account with a podcast site like Podomatic.com, uploaded it online, and called it a day. But no, that would not only be too easy, but it would be far less lucrative for Taberski. Throughout that first episode, Taberski seems to be shocked that Richard Simmons has abruptly gone from being an extroverted, friendly public figure to going into becoming a recluse while cutting off contact with people. I just want to say that sadly, this is not uncommon. I've experienced this myself personally with someone I thought I knew well until he made radical changes in his life and has since become more reclusive. But it would take a separate podcast or two to explain in full detail. I'll admit that the first episode became interesting at times when Taberski interviewed people who had known Simmons, such as a female fan whom Simmons once communicated with on a weekly basis. And that woman, who was originally morbidly obese, had lost 200 pounds thanks to his frequent phone encouragements. But when he explores theories on why Simmons has stepped away from the spotlight, it becomes little more than the podcast equivalent of a gossip tabloid that one can find at the supermarket checkout line. He has even asked the listening audience to provide any kind of clues or theories as to what may have happened to Richard Simmons so he can explore them further in future podcasts. On the surface, it looks like Taberski is trying to see if foul play is involved and if it is something that the LAPD had missed in its investigation. But Taberski has never indicated that he has any kind of criminal investigation experience, and a real professional detective would not openly make a podcast espousing theories while he's still investigating a case. Besides, it's very likely that after over 40 years of being in the public spotlight, Richard Simmons has merely burned out and he just wants to take time out for himself so he can take a rest. Given that he's now 68 years old, it's even possible that he has decided to retire and spend the rest of his life living quietly off of the millions of dollars he has earned. It's his choice and nobody else's business, including that of his so-called friend Dan Taberski. This podcast series also makes me ask this question. Had Richard Simmons been merely a typical obscure fitness instructor who's not a celebrity, who has simply taught at local gyms throughout his career and never made a single fitness video or television appearance, would Dan Taberski still make a multi-part podcast series about his friend's sudden reclusiveness? The cynic in me says no. As for me, I have no intention of listening to any further episodes of Missing Richard Simmons because I feel it's too crass and exploitative. Dan Taberski claims that he's doing it out of concern for his missing friend, but I think he's more likely doing it out of concern for his personal bank account than his friend's well-being. The fact that Taberski mentioned in that first podcast that he had once explored doing a documentary with Richard Simmons about Simmons' life and career, which fell through when Simmons withdrew from the public eye and cut off all further contact with him, makes me believe that he's doing the podcast series as an alternate way of making money off of Simmons since he's not able to make that documentary without Simmons' cooperation. I think that everyone should just boycott the series and leave Richard Simmons alone. If he wants to reemerge as a celebrity, I'm sure he'll do it in his own time frame and of his own volition. And if he doesn't want to be a public figure anymore, well, he's definitely earned his rest. If you miss Richard Simmons that much, I suggest going online, buying one of his many fitness videos like Sweatin' to the Oldies, playing it in your DVD player, and working out while you are watching it. Otherwise, leave Richard Simmons alone. That's it for this podcast. By the way, if you want more from me, check out my blog at sagittariusdolly.wordpress.com. That's SAGITTARIUSDOLLY.wordpress.com. Bye for now and have a nice day.